Hi, I'm Deborah Walker, and I am presenting information about how to set the stage for having discussions across cultural differences, and also facilitating a discussion with you about how to have discussions across cultural differences. I'll offer two tools for doing that. One is a set of multicultural guidelines, and the other tool is a tool for cultural sharing, which helps you to get to know who you are as a prerequisite for having dialogue across differences. And so the first tool that I want to offer is a set of guidelines, and those are listed here. And so I ask you to follow along with me with these guidelines. I've used these guidelines in many instances, and they really do work in terms of creating an environment of safety in the room. I didn't say necessarily comfort, but they do create a way for people to be in conversation with one another around cultural differences. So I want to offer those to you first. The first guideline is the notion of try on, that when we're learning about cultural differences, it's oftentimes new information, and the way to really engage around our differences is to be willing to try on the information. You know, if you don't find the information useful, outside of the dialogue, you can throw it away, but at least while in the dialogue, be willing to try on new ideas, new ways of thinking about differences. The second guideline is that it's okay to disagree, that we bring different ways of viewing the world, we bring our own perspectives to the dialogue, and that we're not going to always agree. That's part of who we are as humans. That doesn't mean we're going to be disagreeable, but that we honestly have different perspectives based on our way of being and our growing up. So it's perfectly okay to disagree around our differences. What's not okay is to do what I call attacking, shaming, and blaming, because it interferes with my ability or your ability to get to know one another, to build trust, to create the safety such that you can honestly disagree or honestly have dialogue for differences, around differences. So it's not okay to attack, shame, and blame. How many of you have been in situations where you felt, when you dialogued across differences, attacked, shamed, and blamed? Okay, yeah, all of us in one way or another. So you have a sense of what that might look like in your own life. So please be aware of that. The next guideline is the notion of practicing self-focus, and that essentially means speaking from the I place. I believe is one way of doing that, because what you want to do in terms of differences is to bring your own experience into the room so that people get to know who you are, your identity, and where you are. So speak from the I place rather than the we or us, because essentially when you do that, you're speaking for other people, and other people might not agree with what you're saying, so it's important to speak from the I place. So that's what we mean when we talk about self-focus. Also, what we know is that feelings are going to come up, that you may feel sad, you may feel mad, you may feel scared. There are other feelings that may come up as you talk about cultural differences, anxiety. There may be joy. Whatever the feelings, just know that feelings are often going to come up, and that's perfectly normal and okay. But be aware of the feelings that come up for you so you can address those too. The next guideline is to notice both process and content. Content is what is said. Process is how you say it. Content is what's in your lesson, what's in Dr. Fox's lesson plan. The process is how she communicates that as an example of process. Process has to do with the climate in the room. Have you ever been in conversations where you know that people aren't saying what they think and feel? That there's an elephant in the room? Well, that has to do with the process. So the process would stop and have the conversation, what's going on, what's not being said. So be aware and notice process and content. The next guideline is to practice both and thinking. And the notion here is that there are multiple realities, that we can be thinking several things at one time and all are right from our perspective. So for example, I can say, I am both wanting to be here in this session with you, and I want to be in my car driving down the highway. Not necessarily, but That's a way of thinking. Both can be true. So it's not either or. It's a willingness to acknowledge multiple realities. Have you ever been in situations where you wanted to do two things, like be in the classroom and be outside with your friends? How many of you? Both are true, right? Okay, and there's nothing wrong with it. That really is the point, that we all have multiple realities. And the people that we communicate with across our differences also have multiple realities. So be aware of both and thinking. And one way to frame both and thinking is, rather than say but, which discounts what you've said before, try on what it feels like to say and after you've stated a reality. State and see what that feels like. The next guideline is be aware of intent and impact. And I'm often fond of saying across cultural differences that there's no way to be in a relationship with another person without making mistakes. We absolutely are going to make mistakes because we are different. And that's wonderful. If you're willing to acknowledge that you are powerful, that you can have an impact, and that your impact may be different from your intent, you will go a long way toward creating an environment where you can have dialogue with other folks. If, for example, your focus is on the intent of what you said, like, I really didn't intend that, and you really shouldn't take it that way, you hear all those shoulds, what's likely to happen? They're what? They're still going to take and think you're just focusing on you rather than them. So if you're focused on the impact on them, it will increase the likelihood that your relationship with them will strengthen, because they see that you're focused on the impact. Wow, I didn't mean to have that impact on you, and I hear that's the impact that I had on you, rather than the intent. The intent focuses on you, the impact focuses on them. And finally, confidentiality. In groups, oftentimes around cultural differences, we will talk about things of a personal nature. And the idea is that it's okay to share what your facilitator says or what you have experienced in the group, and it's not okay to share what other people have shared. Because what's likely to happen if you go out and say that someone said something of a personal nature? What is your hunch that's going to happen? It's going to get back to them, and when it gets back to them, what's going to happen? It's going to change the whole dynamic, and they're not going to trust you to be in a group again. So that's why these guidelines are really important. So having heard the guidelines and knowing that you've been in conversations and in dialogue across differences, from your perspective, which of these guidelines that you've probably already used are easier for you to use, and which ones are more difficult? And I just want to hear from several of you about which ones are easier and which ones are harder for you to use. So, okay? Would you? Wait, she's going to get the mic on you, so we can hear you.
It doesn't matter which order we go in, right?
Nope, whichever ones work for you.
Okay.
Yeah, they're yours.
Okay. Well, I would talk about the ones that are kind of more difficult for me.
Okay.
The first one is, it's not okay to shame, blame, or attack your peers. I feel though sometimes my peers don't like to take criticism. And so sometimes I might not even attack that person, but they might feel, just like you said, they would feel some type of way, and so a confrontation will ensue. So that's one thing I'm still continuing to work on, is not to blame people, but say that we have a problem that we have to solve. Another one is to notice both the process and content. Sometimes, like you said, I might have something that I want to say to you, but how I say it can make a negative impact on how people will take it from me. So learning to better polish my image is something that was difficult for me, but I'm learning that now because of Dr. Fox. But my positive ones is the try-on behavior. I think I'm really comfortable in being a team player and actually saying, okay, even if my idea wasn't accepted, I can still be able to take on task of trying new things. And my last one was to be aware of the both intent and impact. I think you hit that on the button. That's very accurate of saying that if you don't know how the other person's feeling, sometimes you shouldn't say those things. So really, in this business communication class, we learned that knowing what your intent is will still have a big impact, negatively or positively, on what you might do with those future business connections. So those are my 4.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Someone else? Yeah. Back here.
Do I need to say 4?
No.
Okay.
No. No.
Well, I feel as though the one that I need to work on the most would be aware of both the intent and the impact of your actions. I think a lot of the times, with us being young and in college, a lot of the times we act and think later. Like, well, you do something and then, you take the time to think about it like, well, that really wasn't too smart. So I think that I need to work on that a little bit. Something that I think that that I do really well in and I excel in is the it's not okay to blame, shame, and attack. I'm really good with criticism. I'm a good person with criticism. Most times when it's like in Dr. Fox's class and well, in both her classes, both her business communication and human resources, at the end of presentations we provide feedback, and I feel as though that is something that I'm strong with even outside of school. When my friends have problems, I'm usually that person that they can listen to, and or just I can listen. And sometimes I can provide that feedback for them that is not necessarily judging them, but more so giving them my opinion and listening and actually valuing what they're saying. And lastly, something that I probably could work on a little bit more, which confuses me a little bit, is that it's okay to disagree. Because just most times when you disagree about something, it's really, really hard to get over the disagreeing. Because you're like, okay, well, we need to work on this, but we still couldn't get over that. So it's kind of still like you said, that elephant in the room. Like, it's kind of hard to get over something that we obviously didn't agree about earlier. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. Thanks. One more?
One of the ones that I felt I was most confident in was being able to keep confidentiality. If someone shares something with me, or if we're in a group setting and we share something together, I always keep that within the group. One of the ones that I felt I was a little weak on is being aware of both intent and impact of my actions. Sometimes, even coming from the other person, sometimes I may say something or do something and not realize how the other person's affected, and then go and tell them they shouldn't have took it that way, or you shouldn't feel this way because that's not what I meant. Instead of saying, okay, I understand why you're upset and I'm sorry. So I feel like those are the two that kind of jumped out at me.
Great. Thanks.
Wow.
Anyone else before we move to cultural sharing? Okay.
I myself, I find myself being really good with it's okay to disagree.
Okay.
Disagreeing with my peers usually teach me something in the end. I find it that a lot of things I point out, people might not understand. So when they disagree with me, it gives me an opportunity to explain myself and give them my reasoning behind it. Something that might be a little hard for me is noticing both the process and content, because some things I say might come off a little abrasive. So I find myself having to find a better way to say things, or saying them in a softer context, because my vocabulary comes off intimidating most of the time. Another thing that I could work on also is practicing both and thinking. I'm not used to that, so adding "and" into a conversation might change the dynamics of it for myself.
Great. Wonderful. And you all are so on target as you talk about what's easy and what's hard for you. And what I encourage you to do is to keep on practicing each one of these, because to the degree that you get skilled at using try on, it's okay to disagree, it's not okay to attack, shame, and blame, practice self-focus, notice both process and content, practice both and thinking, be aware of intent and impact and confidentiality. To the degree that you practice each one of those, you will enhance your own skill at being in dialogue across cultural differences, and that's really, really great. So as a part of, we also want to take a look at what other tool is available to you to increase your ability to be in dialogue with others. And as I noted, knowing who you are, your own cultural identity, is an important tool in being in relationship to other people. So we want to spend some time doing cultural introductions, and that is having you to begin to think about who you are and what you bring to the table in terms of race, gender, class, age, sexual orientation, the ways in which we are different with one another. So I know you've already had an opportunity to kind of look at the differences and to give a little bit of thought to how you identify. So who was willing to do a cultural introduction? Who's willing to share their cultural identities and what's important to them? Okay.
My name is Brittany Neely. I am Black. I would say I'm considered middle class now, or if I were to use my college status, I would say working class poor. I am a woman, and I was born and raised in Arlington, Virginia, and I also was raised as a Christian in a Baptist church.
Okay. And I didn't ask this question, but I'm going to throw it out. You can answer or not. Is there anything about your cultural identities that you get strength from or that you like about your cultural identity?
What can I say? I wouldn't say my height has much to do with my culture, but I would say some cultures are less fortunate in the height categories, but I can't say I do appreciate being tall.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. And think about that, what you like about your cultural identity as others answer. Okay. Who wants to share?
Hi. My name is Latika Brown, and yes, I'm Black, African American. Ethnicity, I'm African descent. My grandfather Puerto Rican, and my mother's mother is also Black. What I would consider my classes right now, I would consider middle class, and my culture identities. I am a woman, and my religion is Christian as well. And I was born in Texas, in the United States. I am an American. And I would say about the response that you had just said, well, my response to that would be I learned a lot because I am a military kid when we got transferred to Hawaii. So I spent my last year of high school over there, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but there's not a lot of African Americans over there.
Right.
So going over there, it made me value being an African American that much more because they're really ignorant towards us as a whole. You know, they ask questions like, why your hair look like that? Why do you talk like that? So it made me a lot more proud to be an African American, and I actually vowed to go to HBCU when I went to college because I was over there. And it made me want to be around people like me a whole lot more.